Backstage at the Academy Awards, where Ethan Carter had just won Best Actor, the host asked him, "What's your biggest feeling about your first love?" He fell silent for so long that people around him began to murmur before he finally whispered two words: regret. I curled up on the sofa watching the live broadcast, the melted cake on the table a messy blob, cream dripping down the chocolate plaque that read, "Happy 3rd Anniversary." Ethan had forgotten. It was our 3rd anniversary. At 3 in the morning, he stumbled and drunk, and I was shoving the last of my clothes into a suitcase. "Lila." His voice was slurred, but he stepped back instinctively, as if afraid I'd smell the perfume on his collar. I stared at the fresh hickey on his neck and suddenly laughed. "Ethan, we're done." As I lifted the suitcase and pulled open the door, I crashed into a familiar embrace I hadn't felt in years. "I have no exes anywhere. Want to come with me?" My phone, which was navigating, popped up a text from Ethan. "Lila, I'm about to go on stage. Talk later." After reading the first line, I had no desire to open it. June in New York City was unusually rainy. The apartment I rented was an old brownstone in Brooklyn, and I had to park a mile away in a public lot. The umbrella in the car had been taken by Ethan months ago, and I'd never remembered to put a new one in. After nervously walking through a dark alley, I finally stood at my door. The summer heat, amplified by the humidity of the rainy season, was unbearable. After unlocking the door, I habitually cast the live stream of tonight's event from my tablet to the opposite screen. While Ethan wasn't on stage yet, I quickly took a shower. But as soon as I stepped out of the bathroom, I heard a familiar voice, the meaning of first love. Regret. The host's teasing tone sounded harsh in my ears at that moment. Ethan was still regretting. Ugh. I hated this rain. Why did it linger so long that even after a shower, I still felt sticky? Looking at the cake I'd braved the rain to buy, I suddenly felt nauseous. Unwilling to waste it, I forced myself to eat a piece. It was so greasy. Ethan's phone rang just as I was in the bathroom, gagging to throw up the cake. I shouldn't have forced myself against my body's will. The urgent ringtone and the disgusting, sweet texture of the cream brought back memories of the hospital corridor not long ago. That night, Ethan's agent had taken him to a dinner party with a famous Hollywood investor, one who had great connections, but loved to pressure people into drinking. Ethan's stomach had deteriorated over the years in the entertainment industry, with irregular meals and frequent hunger. That night, he laid his head on my lap, drunk and crying. "Lila, you're the only one who won't leave me, right?" I knew who he was referring to, the one who had left him. I'd thought it was just his insecurity acting up. But just as I'd calmed my racing heart, I heard him mutter in his sleep, drugged and unconscious, "Chloe, I miss you so much." It was the start of the year, and the spring flu was rampant. The hospital corridor, where I'd stayed with him during his 4 drip, was packed. The headache from forgetting my jacket in my hurry felt even worse amid the sharp ache in my contracting heart. The shoulders I'd been holding straight suddenly gave way, slamming into the cold tile wall. Ethan didn't sleep soundly that night. "Lila." When I heard him call my name, my heart couldn't help but hope. But he just smacked his lips and kept sleeping. In his sleep, that face I'd fallen for so long ago was even more dazzling, sculpted by time. My gaze lingered on his face, and after a long while, I sighed heavily. "Ethan, this time, I'll pretend I didn't hear that. From now on, don't let me catch you drifting again." My thoughts were pulled back from the memories by the phone vibrating again. A sharp notification cut through the rain. In Ethan's text thread, someone had sent a photo, a blurred hotel carpet in the background, and a pair of clasped hands on a white bed. I knew it was Chloe, sending it from his phone. In fact, I might have been one of the witnesses to Ethan's first love. Back then, when I was a junior at NYU, struggling with 8 a.m. classes, Ethan had already dropped out of college. Young men just entering the workforce are always full of energy, passion bright enough to outshine everything. Even more so than when he was in school. In high school, Ethan had already stood out. Student council, clubs, you could see him at every little event. That's how I met him. Of course, Ethan and I weren't schoolmates. It was his high school's homecoming, and my best friend from high school, Mia, who was one of the event organizers, had invited me, who was stuck with calculus at NYU, to come and relax. Young love comes suddenly and just as fiercely. Backstage, the environment was chaotic, with people rushing around. Mia was called away to handle last-minute work, and I, left alone, didn't notice the boy running quickly behind me. As we collided, and my face was about to hit a sharp metal table, Ethan pulled me toward him. I avoided a disfiguring injury and instead fell into a warm embrace with a lemon scent. Especially when I looked up, he was looking down at me gently, backlit by the stage lights. That moment was enough to make my heart race for a long time, for someone who'd never been in love before. Even now, when I think back, that love felt completely natural. I don't know how Mia had unknowingly befriended Ethan and his group, but by the next homecoming, I found out. Same place, same chaos. But this time, I wasn't left alone. She sat me next to a classmate of Ethan's, also an outsider, also not from the school. The two of us, outsiders, sat awkwardly in the dim corner backstage, waiting for the people we knew to finish working and come get us. It was like two kindergarten kids waiting for their parents. That's what I thought at the time. But birds of a feather flock together, and it's true. Ethan's middle school classmate, Jake, was just as lively and enthusiastic as he was. In less than 2 minutes, I found out Jake was a senior in the same major as me at NYU. As he chatted with me from elementary school to college and beyond, the party finally ended. Ethan looked especially handsome that night, a crisp suit over the shirt he usually wore as a jacket, a common tie, but it looked perfect on him. No matter how handsome he was, shy as I was back then, I only dared to glance once before sneaking a photo of him from his high school's Instagram page. We two, outsiders, were also invited to the after party. As I held a glass of orange juice and huddled in the corner of the private room, listening to Mia whisper to me about who liked who at the table, Jake was already red-faced from drinking with the other guys. After a few rounds of drinks, the girls' gossip came to an end. Nearly a quarter of the girls at the table had some unspoken crush on Ethan. By the end of the orange juice, I tasted a hint of bitterness. After saying goodbye to them at the NYU campus gate, I watched Jake stumbling ahead. After hesitating, I worked up the courage to go help him, but almost tripped over a small bump less than 2 inches high. A boy grabbed Jake just as he was about to fall into the grass, and with his other hand, he steadied me before I hit the ground. The next day, I heard from a sober Jake that the boy was Liam Hayes, the one our advisor had talked about nonstop since our freshman year at NYU. Back then, I couldn't help but sigh at how unfair the world was. Some people were just enviable, top grades, and so handsome, even if he looked a bit intimidating. But beautiful people have thorns. It's normal. The world is unfair, probably because I'm not a guy. I comforted myself like that, then forgot about the incident. After that day, I was so busy that I spent all my time in the library except eating and sleeping. I even didn't have time to go to Mia's school to sneak hot pot in the student affairs office with them. I was so busy that I didn't see Ethan for a long time. Instead, I often ran into Liam in the library. Smart people who were also hardworking made it even more painful. To escape the shadow of his excellence, I stopped going to the library and moved around empty classrooms on campus where there were no classes. For seniors, every meeting on campus was one less. After I finished my finals and excitedly invited Mia from the next school to go traveling, I found out Ethan had already left school to go home. During winter break, I opened Ethan's text thread countless times, but only dared to send him a generic Happy New Year at midnight on New Year's Eve. I counted down the days of the holiday in anticipation. On the day I returned to school, I went straight to Ethan's high school. When I casually mentioned the idea of a group dinner to Mia, who was scrolling through Instagram, I only found out that Ethan's return date was undetermined. Love, at some point, breeds resentment, even unrequited love. When I ran into Liam for the 5th time in the NYU cafeteria, my love for Ethan was mixed with resentment at his long absence. Thinking about this, I got up, went to the kitchen, grabbed a few ice-cold beers, and brought them back to the table. The sound of opening the beer cans was exactly the same as the sound of the orange soda Ethan had opened for me by hand when he graduated. Ethan's senior year in high school, he'd spent so little time on campus that you could count the days on two hands. On the day he took his graduation photos, we finally gathered again. Perhaps, without me noticing, my love had already slipped out. Seeing that I still hadn't confessed, Mia, in a hurry, sat Ethan next to me on my left, and on my right was Liam, who'd been brought along by Jake. Familiar restaurant private room, the same delicious food, and the boy I'd liked for so long sitting next to me. At that moment, my heart, like the orange soda Ethan had handed me, was bubbling with sweetness. Happiness came to an abrupt end the moment I saw the white figure by the road as we left. I stood stiffly in place, watching Ethan walk toward her, hug her, and then leave our sight with a shy smile teased by everyone and the happiness of having his lover in his arms. It was a long time later that I heard about how they met and fell in love from a friend who thought I'd stopped liking Ethan. Chloe, Ethan's first love. A wealthy heiress from a well-educated family, with connections and resources enough to attract a crowd of people trying to curry favor. Bored at home during winter break, Ethan's mom had sent him to help at his uncle's factory. After a long day of work, Ethan had gone to a bar for a drink and met Chloe, who was there with her girlfriends to relax. With alcohol flowing, it was just the usual game of truth or dare to liven things up. After Chloe lost for the second time, her friends pushed her to add Ethan on Instagram. They talked back and forth and soon confirmed their relationship. My love wasn't enough to make me ignore the fact that he had a girlfriend. I blocked Ethan's Instagram and buried those moments of love with time. Love is always full of compromise and mutual adaptation. When two dazzling people rush into their first love, they try too hard, too easily burning each other. When I heard that Ethan and Chloe had broken up completely, I had already graduated for 2 years. As soon as I graduated, I received an offer from my dream publishing house, and despite my family's opposition, I resolutely moved to Los Angeles. Over these 2 years, while I'd lost touch with most of my college classmates, I still chatted frequently with Mia. When I saw the group chat screenshot Mia sent me, the love for Ethan that I'd thought had faded under the weight of time surged up again from the bottom of my heart, and I gave up struggling completely. The long-accumulated longing for someone, and the fear of letting love slip away again, gave this timid person the courage to rush forward. Ethan was already a minor celebrity actor by then, but he still kept in touch with his high school friends. The excuse I found to see him was terrible. I want to find inspiration for my new book on the film set. When he led me around the set, which hadn't started filming yet, my feigned interest and pretend note-taking were too obvious. My shoddy acting was naive and ridiculous in front of an actor like him. Polite people are always more tolerant of others. Ethan, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, was not much different in private from when he was in high school. When he was filming, I would sit quietly in an undisturbed corner with his things, and after he finished work, we'd go to a food truck alley to eat our fill. This continued for several days. In these moments without others, we developed a different kind of affection that we hadn't had in high school because of my shyness. A week later, I returned to Los Angeles. Ethan seamlessly moved into a new film crew. But from then on, I often received photos of his daily life on set during his breaks. This life continued until the day the new movie finished filming 3 months later. Because early that morning, Ethan had taken the first flight to Los Angeles and come to my side. The memories made the long night pass by in a flash. I heard Ethan open the door, but the lingering alcohol made my reaction slow. "How did you drink so much?" Ethan's beautiful eyebrows were furrowed tightly. He was accusing me, but he forgot he smelled like alcohol too. I opened my mouth to explain, but when my eyes fell on the cake on the table, now unappetizing due to the unbearable summer heat, I suddenly had nothing to say. Following my gaze, Ethan also saw the cake, which was unrecognizable. He could only imagine what it had looked like the night before from the crooked, "Happy 3rd Anniversary" written on it. Ethan's expression softened suddenly. "Lila, I'm sorry, I came via." I cut him off abruptly. "Ethan, come here and hug me." The sudden request for a hug stunned Ethan for a moment. I watched him carefully from his daze to his sober embrace. Ethan's hug was not much different from the first time we met, still warm. Even in June, I couldn't help but cling to it. He still smelled like that lemon body wash. All these years since we'd been together, I'd insisted on repurchasing that lemon-scented body wash again and again. Ethan had teased me more than once, "You should ask their brand for an endorsement fee." I just smiled and said nothing. Everything was the same. Except, it seemed, we weren't. Tonight, there was also a faint scent of women's perfume on him. I'll miss you. I'll break up with her soon. Chloe, be good. I love you the most. Okay, I'll come see you tonight. Ethan's phone call with Chloe at the door. He thought he'd spoken quietly enough. But perhaps, because he'd been so busy and hadn't come home in so long, he'd forgotten. The old brownstone we lived in had terrible sound insulation. I'll miss you. I'll break up with her soon. I love you the most. I'll come see you tonight. Such simple words, yet so hard to understand. Hugging the person you like is the most beautiful thing in the world. If I hadn't seen the hickey on his neck, a blatant mark of possession. Ethan, we're done. After letting go of me in a hurry, he turned to go into the bedroom, but just as he lifted his foot to cross the threshold, my voice stopped him in his tracks. What? Ethan's exclamation was filled with obvious joy, and as soon as he said it, he realized his gaffe. Why do you want to break up? An actor, acting even at home. At that moment, I felt sorry for him. I was just tired. I didn't answer his question, just stared back at him silently. After a long silence, he seemed to lose his patience to pretend. Ethan frowned, his voice cold, a tone I rarely heard. If you've made up your mind, then do as you please. With that, he turned and went into the bathroom, where he stayed for an hour. My luggage was light. I packed it in less than half an hour. I'd planned to wait for him to come out to say goodbye, but he never did. As I pulled open the door, I stared at the bathroom door. It was still tightly closed. Just like his heart. Goodbye, Ethan. He didn't hear those words. But the person standing at the door did. When I turned my head back toward the room, I was really startled by the person in front of me. Liam Hayes, whom I hadn't seen in years, was standing at my door for some reason. His forehead was damp, whether from sweat or rain. Glancing past his slightly wet shoulders, I realized that the rain from yesterday had actually continued until now. Excuse me, can I get by? I didn't know if he still remembered me, but I'd just broken up and didn't want to guess a man's thoughts or ask questions. All I wanted now was to find a hotel and sleep well. As soon as I finished speaking, I lifted my foot to leave, but my arm was grabbed. Lila. I have no exes anywhere. Want to come with me? Ethan, who just noticed I was gone and changed clothes to go meet his ex, opened the door and saw Liam holding me. As Ethan reached out to pull me, I dodged around Liam and left the narrow doorway. Long time no see, Liam. Should I call you Mr. Hayes now? Ethan's tone was full of teasing and curiosity. Only Mr. Carter, the Academy Award winner, is both handsome and extremely affectionate. Last night, Mr. Carter's speech about his first love was truly admirable. It's just that Mr. Carter's eyesight isn't very good. Hayes Group now has investments in the medical field. If you need help, feel free to ask. I was forced to listen to their tense conversation as I fumbled for an umbrella in my bag. When I opened the umbrella, it snapped slightly, and the faint sound made both of them look at me. Under their intense gazes, I took 2 steps forward, then stopped. Turning around, my eyes wandered between the two of them, finally settling on Liam. Liam, do you want to keep standing in the rain? Liam was smart. He understood what I meant as soon as I spoke. He took 3 quick steps, ducked under my umbrella, and took it from my hand. I turned around, but didn't move. Liam stood beside me, saying nothing. From the corner of my eye, I saw his lips pressed tightly, as if he was suppressing something. Ethan. Ethan responded quickly when he heard his name, but his voice was muffled by the increasingly heavy rain hitting the umbrella. I heard it. I didn't reply. I linked my arm through Liam's and left the damp alley completely. When we reached the corner where Ethan couldn't see us, I let go of Liam's arm. The man looked at me unreservedly. I'm serious. Liam turned his head slightly, his voice sinking into my ear from directly above. The atmosphere fell silent again. Liam said nothing more, returning to the familiar quiet version of himself. He held the umbrella silently, standing beside me as we waited for the Uber. Just as my phone notified me that a driver had accepted the ride, I looked up at the man who'd been staring at me secretly. Liam, would you invite me to your place? Even though I was no longer young, I still felt a twinge of hindsight about my youth when I saw someone who'd made me feel so much back then. Liam's driver was probably nearby, because he arrived quickly. When he wrapped a large scarf around me, I noticed his soaked shoulder and suddenly smiled. So even smart people become silly when they like someone. The man being teased just kept using that expensive scarf to wipe the water splashed on my hem. Other than his red ears, he showed no other signs of embarrassment. Liam. I suddenly leaned in, startling the man who'd been bending down to check if I was wet anywhere else. After calming down a little, Liam looked into my eyes. Do you want to kiss me? The driver, who'd been driving carefully, had wisely raised the partition between the front and back seats as soon as we got in. At that moment, my voice wasn't too soft, but only Liam and I could hear it. Liam pulled his eyes away from mine as if he'd been burned. He stuffed the scarf flusteredly into my hand and sat up straight. You don't want to? I wrapped the scarf around his neck and pulled him toward me. As we got closer, Liam's breath paused for a few seconds, then gushed out hotter. I leaned in. The air conditioning in the car was a bit low, and I frowned as his cold lips touched mine. When I pulled back, I felt a large hand wrap tightly around the back of my head, pressing me down, not allowing me to pull away. Have you thought about it? Liam's voice was hoarse, and the hot breath from his words spilled over my face. I blushed, a feeling I hadn't had in a long time. But I met his increasingly close lips and kissed him back. Liam's fingers brushed my earlobe intentionally or unintentionally. I didn't know what Liam had been doing these years, but his fingertips had thin calluses, which scratched the delicate skin behind my ear, making me itch. I shrank my neck uncomfortably, but Liam misunderstood, thinking I wanted to run. He bit my upper lip and pressed me against the car window. This was the kind of passion I'd never seen from Ethan. In 3 years of dating, we'd kissed only a handful of times, and there were no moments of abandon. When I saw the hickey on his neck this morning, besides sadness, I felt a hint of envy and confusion. It was the most primitive emotional impulse between a man and a woman that Ethan had never shown me, even after all his gentle care. Liam was dissatisfied with my distraction. He pressed a little harder with his fingertips, pinching my earlobe. Lila, the person kissing you now is me. Although I didn't know Liam well, from Ethan's attitude toward him today and the little details of his behavior, I could tell he'd been successful in his career these years. But Mr. Hayes, who was so successful in his career, was actually complaining about the inattention of the person he was kissing, like he was starved for affection. It was such a contrast. I found him a little cute. I laughed, but opened my mouth slightly, responding to his deeper, more lingering kiss. My response flipped a switch in Liam. When I felt a dexterous hand slip into my shirt, his palm was already pressed tightly against my lower back. His fingers teased my waist, but I didn't notice. Because at that moment, Liam was so hot. Not in the car. After a long while, a deep sounded, and Liam pulled his hand back, sitting on the other side of the car, a seat away from me. Let it cool down. He said this just as we entered a tunnel. Through the bright, warm light of the tunnel, I saw a flash of embarrassment on Liam's face. I laughed out loud. Liam looked back at me, a little annoyed, but when he saw how happy I was, he laughed too. But after laughing, he gritted his teeth and said, I hope you're still laughing this hard later. 10 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a villa. While I was still looking around through the car window, I was suddenly picked up in his arms. Take your time looking tomorrow. On the second floor of the villa, when the man kicked the door shut with his foot, making a dull thud, my heart skipped a beat. Clothes were thrown from behind the door to the bed in a hurry. In my life, I'd never seen a man's body so up close. Looking at Liam's toned chest and obvious muscles as he knelt on the bed, I was dumbfounded. Ethan never went shirtless at home. He was busy with work, and we rarely saw each other. On the rare days he had off, we'd just watch TV or cook together. Seeing me staring at his body, Liam's voice unconsciously became a little cocky. "What are you thinking about?" Looking at Liam, who was nuzzling my neck like a clingy puppy begging for praise, I played along. "I'm thinking Mr. Hayes is as excellent as ever." "Oh? How so?" Liam lifted his head, which he'd messed up with his nuzzling. He hadn't styled his hair today, and his bangs hung down, covering half of his eyes, whether they were uncut or intentionally left that length. I reached out to brush his bangs away, and without the obstruction, all the emotions in Liam's eyes rushed toward me. "You were amazing back then, senior. Our advisor never stopped praising you in front of us juniors and seniors. Didn't you notice you gained a lot of fans?" It was hard to forget the fear of being overshadowed by his grades in college. "When I failed my calculus exam, the teacher compared me to you harshly. It broke my heart." I complained earnestly. Seeing me like this, Liam laughed so hard his hands went weak, and he lay down on top of me. "What about you? Are you my fan?" "Liam, are you sure you want to talk right now?" I poked the man's rolling Adam's apple with the hand I'd been resting by my side. Liam, startled by the gesture, instantly changed his expression. He clamped down on my jaw, his thumb brushing my lips for a long time. When he was sure I wasn't joking or trying to run, Liam smiled and kissed me. Outside the window, the rain had quietly gotten heavier. The wind blew the rain sideways, slamming against the window panes. The noise was loud enough to cover the high and low sounds inside the room. The room was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere, wrapping the two people embracing on the bed tightly, as if trying to drown them forever in this desire. Liam looked at the woman in his arms, her brows still furrowed in pain even in her sleep, and felt a twinge of regret for his lack of control. He took the medicine from the housekeeper and gently applied it to her wounds, finally seeing the discomfort fade from her pale face. Outside, besides the scattered streetlights, there was only endless darkness. The intense happiness of having the person he'd longed for since he was young truly enter his life filled Liam. After that day, I stayed at Liam's house temporarily. I'd planned to leave the next morning when I woke up, but I was caught by Liam, who'd just come back from a run, and he carried me back inside. "Where are you going, Miss Lila?" I was a little surprised he'd figured out my identity, but thinking about his current status, it was only natural he'd found out. I gave up and lay down on the sofa. "I have a book signing tomorrow. I need to go there today." My excuse was still terrible. Liam looked at me with an expression that said, "Keep making it up." I felt uneasy under his gaze, so I had to tell the truth. "Even though we slept together last night, it's normal for men and women to get impulsive." "Then how about you keep me? I can cook, I can clean, I can be your housewife." That didn't sound like Liam at all. I was stunned, staring at him for a long time. How had the cold-top student from back then become so humorous? "Mr. Hayes, you're really good at telling bad jokes." "I can't afford you." "I have to go. What if it rains later?" I was worried Liam would stop me, but he just turned and went upstairs. The villa was too far for Ubers to reach, so I had to push my luggage slowly toward the exit. Just a few steps from Liam's door, a familiar car stopped beside me. It was Liam. "I'll take you." After leaving Liam's house that day, our relationship went back to how it was a few years ago. As everyone said, when love fails, career thrives. I found out my book rights had been sold just as I finished my signing in Los Angeles and was about to go back to the hotel to rest. The other party is in a hurry. They said they want to sign the contract today. I thought I was seeing things for a moment. "It's dark outside." I told them that, but they said they'll come to you anywhere you choose. I quoted an extremely high price, and they agreed without hesitation. By the end, I had no trouble guessing who it was. After hanging up the phone, I found a cafe nearby to wait. Looking at the man walking in from the door, I couldn't help but feel emotional. Mr. Hayes is really wealthy. Looking at the man sitting across from me, even though I'd guessed it was him in advance, I still couldn't help but sarcasm. "Ms. Lila's work is worth it." Liam smiled, ignoring the sarcasm in my tone. I didn't want to listen to his emotionless business flattery, so I rolled my eyes and asked curiously, Are you on a business trip in Los Angeles? No. I'm chasing someone. As soon as he said that, I almost spit out the orange juice I'd just drunk all over his face. The man across from me was calm, not the least bit embarrassed, and even thoughtfully handed me a napkin. Thanks, but no. A wave of nausea rushed to my head. I quickly thought back to what I'd eaten today and anything unusual. I couldn't find anything wrong. Finally, I looked at the man across from me, pale, and asked the question I least wanted to admit. Did you not wear a condom that night? I wore one at first, but then I was going to take it off, But what? I pressed. You were in such a hurry, I didn't have time before. Liam looked a little embarrassed, but his obvious concern made me so embarrassed I could have died of shame. Did you drive? Liam nodded obediently. Let's go. If I really am pregnant, you're responsible. Take me to the hospital. Liam drove extremely slowly that day. Liam, if I were a fish, by the time you drive to the hospital, I would have lost my memory dozens of times. Liam's ears turned red. Sorry, I'll hurry. But his speed was still as slow as a turtle. Unbelievable. Hospitals were such annoying places. You never saw them for months, and then you saw everyone at once. While I waited in the lobby for Liam to pick up the test results, I glanced casually and saw a familiar figure at the pharmacy window. I felt a twinge of disgust and was about to leave when I heard his voice. Lila. I tried to pretend I didn't hear him, but Ethan followed me like a leech. Lila, why are you here? The hope in Ethan's eyes was dazzling, as if he'd misunderstood. I have something to do. Looking at the stomach medicine in his hand, I thought about the years I'd spent trying to take care of his stomach, and couldn't help but remind him, medicine alone won't fix your stomach. You need to take care of it daily. You're busy with work, ask Chloe to take care of you in that regard. As soon as I finished speaking, Ethan rushed to respond. Chloe got married a while ago. Huh? Ethan's self-deprecating tone made him look particularly desolate. Her family had arranged it a long time ago. The reason we broke up back then was because her dad wanted her to marry that guy. But then, as the Jiang, Chloe's family, business got worse over the past 2 years. The other family kept putting off the wedding. Chloe came back to me, but last month, her dad found a gold mine in South Africa, and the other family came to propose the next day. After listening to Ethan's story, I couldn't help but feel sorry for him for 2 seconds. You really are unlucky. Lila, is there any chance we can go back to? Ethan took a step toward me. Seeing the distance between us shrink, I stepped back involuntarily. Sensing my resistance, Ethan didn't continue. But I still made my attitude clear. Ethan, this is the best ending for us. You love Chloe. To me, you are just someone suitable, someone to fill the wound left by Chloe's departure. These years, I've tried my best, and I'm tired. Don't bother me anymore. Baby, what are you talking about? Liam's voice came from far away, and the noisy hospital lobby fell silent for a moment. I was so embarrassed I wanted to rush up and cover his mouth. When he walked over, the curious eyes around us were still on us. I wanted to pull Liam away from here, but he put his arm around my waist and stood still. The doctor said the baby is healthy. Liam's words were seemingly directed at me, but his gaze was fixed on Ethan across from us. Watching Ethan's shocked and frustrated expression, Liam suddenly kissed my cheek deliberately. Mr. Carter, we'll be leaving now. Lila needs to rest. Back in the car, looking at Liam, who was in a good mood in the driver's seat, I could hardly connect him to the man I remembered. Since we'd reunited, he'd surprised me again and again. Liam. The man, who was leaning over to fasten my seatbelt, looked up at me seriously. I feel like I never really knew you. After the click of the seatbelt buckling, Liam sat back down. He looked at me for a long time, and just before the car started, he said only one sentence. Then would you like to get to know me a little better every day from now on? Liam's epilogue. In my senior year of college, when I received a call from Jake asking me to pick him up from the campus gate, I was a little annoyed by the trouble. But when I caught that girl who almost tripped over herself, I suddenly felt grateful to him. The next day, after Jake sobered up, I casually asked for her name. Lila. It sounded delicious. I was about to go abroad, and the little flutters in my heart were hidden away. Chapter 9. Over the years abroad, I learned a lot. But just as I thought I could work hard in the field I loved, something unexpected happened at home. I returned to take over the family company and reconnected with my classmates. Jake's career had turned out just as he'd imagined, shining in journalism, becoming a small supervisor at a young age. At the dinner table, watching him drunk, I suddenly thought of that girl. Even after all these years, I still remembered her face clearly. After that, during the frequent dinners I deliberately invited Jake to, I found out about her current situation. Unfortunately, she already had a boyfriend. But they weren't married. I still had a chance. The day I got her current address, I drove there immediately. Her boyfriend was useless. How could he let her live here? That dark alley, a young girl walking alone so often, it was so dangerous. Was the entertainment industry really that unprofitable? In the name of a friend in the industry, I gave him some resources. That way, he'd have money and Lila would live better, right? To be ashamed, in these 20-odd years, I'd never liked anyone except her. The only person I'd ever liked was already in a relationship, but as long as she was happy, I was willing to see it, even if the person beside her wasn't me. But her boyfriend cheated on her. I was also invited to that award show. I hadn't been interested when I received the invitation, but I went anyway, wanting to see what was so good about her boyfriend. The event was over, and as I walked past the backstage storage room, I saw a couple making out. The boy was Lila's boyfriend. A call from a partner came in urgently. Just as the car was leaving the underground garage to go to her house, I was stopped by the partner who'd rushed over. After handling things there, I arrived at her place in the early morning. The alley was too narrow for the car to drive in. I told the driver to find a place to park, then got out and walked in. That night, the rain was lingering, falling nonstop. I'd found a shallow eaves to take shelter from the rain, but after a while, that cheating bastard came back. A little later, Lila opened the door. I asked her if she wanted to come with me. At that moment, I actually regretted saying that. To her, I was just someone she knew a little better than a stranger. How could I have overstepped like that? So when that cheating bastard spoke, I couldn't help but retort. When Lila left and called my name, I was so happy. When she asked if I'd invite her to my house, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. I knew I was being obvious, trying to hide my fluster with the scarf I used to wipe her wet clothes. But when she suddenly leaned in and asked if I wanted to kiss her, I gave up. I really liked her. For the first time, I realized how petty I could be. When she kissed me, even the slightest distraction made me unhappy. That morning was the first time I truly felt happiness. Especially when Lila chased after me and begged for more. At first, I didn't know it was Lila's first time. They'd been together for 3 years. I never would have guessed. Maybe I was too excited, too rough, too unrestrained. Lila slept straight through until the next morning. At 5 in the morning, I was so excited I couldn't sleep. Lying next to Lila, I couldn't help myself, so I got up to go for a run to burn off the excess energy. When I came home full of anticipation, I saw her with her luggage, about to leave. I was a little sad, but I could understand her. I drove her to where she needed to go, then turned back to the company. Lila's book signings were busy. Over the past 2 months, she'd traveled to several cities. After the last signing, I used my biggest advantage now, money, to find a legitimate reason to see her. This time, I could tell Lila was less resistant than she'd been when she left 2 months ago. I knew it was the right choice not to appear in front of her overtly these 2 months. When I saw Lila feeling nauseous, I panicked for a moment, then felt a surge of joy. Am I that good? Amid the joy, I felt a little regret for my behavior that day. If she didn't want it, having an abortion would hurt her body so much. When Lila asked the question we both guessed, I told her the truth. On the way to the hospital, my mind was a mess. Lila complained that I was driving too slow, but Lila, my hands and feet were a little weak. I didn't dare drive fast. The doctor said the baby was healthy, and Lila didn't want to get rid of it. I should have a chance, right? Even if not now. One day, I would definitely win her over with our child. I really liked Lila. Before I knew it, now and every day in the future.